Hey guys, so lately we've been seeing videos from various Battlefield YouTubers explaining what's wrong with the game and how to improve it. And so today I'm going to give my 2 cents of what I'd like to see changed in the game so it's a more enjoyable experience. I don't intend for this to be a rant or a rage video, I'm just being positive about the situation and just trying to put my ideas forward as a long-time Battlefield player. I just want to firstly explain what I believe to be a good Battlefield game, and that is team play, a system that gives incentives for people to help each other and think tactically and having a certain level of needing to think before doing any actions. That's why I play Battlefield. If I wanted to mindlessly just kill players and unlock overpowered items that kills even more players, I would just play Call of Duty. Battlefield, on the other hand, is a completely different breed of an FPS game. It's extremely dynamic, which has been around since the dawn of the Battlefield franchise. But in the past 3 years or so, Battlefield has tried to become more mainstream to pull in as many players as possible. In doing so, the game is left unbalanced and leaning away from that core Battlefield experience that we all want, especially to the veteran players. I think it's important for Battlefield to have a vast array of weapons and gadgets, and generally lots of content in the game to keep its dynamic gameplay, but a lot of these items do need retweaking and rebalancing so we can get that nice balance between the roots of the franchise and mainstream gaming. Let's start with the Airburst. We all hate being killed by it, but I'm sure one time or another we have used it. Obviously DICE had good intentions for this weapon to make it an anti-camper solution, especially snipers that camp on the rooftops for the entire game. So instead of removing it, I think what DICE LA need to do is reduce its damage so it isn't seen as an offensive weapon with extreme amounts of killing power. I would like to see the use of the Airburst just to throw off the enemy and force them out of their camping position instead of just killing targets relatively quick. If you can flush out the enemy and force them to move away from their camping spot, it should still give you that slight advantage to either clear a room or move towards the objective. In terms of the Commander mode, obviously this feature was brought into BF4 to make it more appealing and for people to buy and play the game, but don't get me wrong, Commander mode brings another element to Battlefield's very dynamic nature. However, it's been implemented very poorly and still currently is in a bad way, in my opinion, to fix the Commander system. Instead of the Commander just sitting there in his bed or on the toilet spamming UAVs and the AC-130 whenever it's ready, what I like to see is the Commander only able to use the UAVs and the AC-130 limited amount of times per round. So maybe the Commander can only use the UAV 20 times per round, which increases with the scale of how many tickets the server has been set to. And with the AC-130, maybe make it so the Commander is only able to use it 5 times per round. Obviously this limit also scales with how many tickets the server has been set to. Making it like this is forcing the Commander to think tactically instead of just spamming. He now needs to really watch the battlefield and communicate with squads and work out when and who needs what assets. For example, maybe a squad is taking a certain capture point, which they require one use of the UAVs to spot enemies that might be holding out at that particular point, or maybe the enemy team is steamrolling and completely dominating the capture points with vehicles and infantry. Then the Commander can bring in the AC-130 for players to hop into and take care of the vehicles and infantry. Enforcing limited use of these assets makes the player think what he needs to do, which in my opinion is what makes Battlefield a good game. This should also help squads or single players be more stealthy when they need to, instead of just always worrying about the UAVs giving away their position. In terms of the cruise missile, there needs to be some kind of warning to players in its destruction radius, maybe give the player 7 or so seconds to leave. So now, the AA tank. We all know about this vehicle, it's had some nerfs to it, but it's just still not enough. I think it needs some tweaks to its primary weapon, maybe give it some big damage drop off at a certain distance and also increase its spread increase per shot, or maybe it overheats quicker so the player needs to really control the fire and make sure every bullet hits. When it comes to active radar missiles, I do think this is one element of the game that should be removed. As for jets and the very powerful lock-on weapons needed to counter jets, this is a tricky area to balance. This might sound stupid, but what about making the Stinger and IGLA only able to lock on to heat signatures of jets instead of all types of air vehicles? This will give helicopters a better chance of survival. This adjustment will reduce the incentive for wanting to use these weapons and make him more of a situational weapon. So for example, if a jet is dominating the map going on a 50-0 kill streak, a few engineers could equip the Stinger on their next respawn and go to a point of the map where the jet always flies over and destroy him. Like I said, this is a tricky area to balance, so my idea may not be so great, but I'd like to see what you guys have to say about it. Now, what about class balance? Right now, the assault class is a bit over the top in my opinion. Why the hell do they have access to almost spammable grenade launchers? Now, I know before I did say I like a vast array of weapons and dynamic gameplay, but only to a certain point. I think DICE LA need to remove the grenade launcher completely. It's stupid to have the anti-infantry class that also can revive players and also heal, to also give them really powerful explosive weapons that really should just be for the engineer class. I know I'll probably get some hate for this, but I really do think if you're running assault, you're better off helping your team with the revives than going with the M320 grenade launcher. As for engineer, the class is mostly fine, but like I said before about the changes to lock-on weapons, I also like DICE to fix the issue where slams can't be spotted. They can float in water and are extremely hard to spot, and even on some terrain they can't be spotted at all, which is obviously a bug that's been in the game since release. I really hope the CTE devs fix this problem. Now, as for the support class, I think the mortar still needs some balancing. It needs to be seen the same way as my idea for the Airburst, so maybe reduce its damage, then people will use it to force their enemy into moving away from their camping position instead of using it to completely slaughter the enemy team. The ballistic shield also needs some tweaks. I think in its current form it's kind of useless. It should be able to handle maybe 2 direct hit explosives from a launcher, and in turn to balance it maybe increase the delay between switching from it to your primary weapon so you don't see support players being complete terminators on the battlefield. I would also like this shield to cover you more from splash damage from explosives. Let's face it, go into Operation Locker and go down the hallways with the ballistic shield, you'll still die within 2 seconds. Now, let's talk about the defensive perk. I don't mean to offend people in any way, but it's been widely spread within the community that the defensive perk is the go-to field upgrade kit because you can take more damage, which increases your time to live. Well, yes, that is true to a certain point, but what people don't realize is just how useless defensive perk actually is. Most people think you can take an additional bullet from the enemy before you can die in any situation. In terms of bolt action sniper rifles, DMRs and slug rounds, yes, it's effective, but to assault rifles, carbines, PDWs and LMGs it's not so effective. The defensive perk doesn't decrease damage when you get shot in the legs, arms, head and pretty much everywhere other than your chest area. So for example, a typical standard assault rifle damage mole of 25 maximum and 18 minimum, the only times an assault rifle with this damage requires an additional bullet to kill is in close ranges within 8 meters or so, then between 32 and 41 meters. Everything between these 2 points, then after 41 meters you don't need an additional bullet to kill. So what the hell does this all mean? Well, we can very roughly calculate for assault rifles, only about 22% of the engagement distances you'll need an additional bullet to kill, and that's assuming all hits are to the chest. So realistically, we have players going for headshots and people might not be as accurate and get some leg shots in, so that brings down that 22% even more. This low percentage pretty much applies to carbines and LMGs as well, so in saying that, defensive field upgrade should just be removed from the game, not because it's good but because it's next to useless. In fact, the damage mold changes to the maximum damage to most weapons in the CTE. Defensive field upgrade won't make any difference in close range, so in my opinion I think people should just use another field upgrade for most situations. I'm not going to cover everything that I think needs changing in Battlefield 4 because this video would probably go for an hour. I might do a part 2 video next week, but for now I just wanted to bring up some main points, so please by all means leave your opinion in the comment section. Let me know if you liked my ideas or if you have a better idea of your own. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.